So hello everyone and welcome once again to How Good is the Summer with Mikazuki Villa Fate We've, also known as the Iroha Swimsuit Fate We've. That's a bunch of mouthfuls. I'm just calling her Searoha because that's what her nickname is, and I think it's a pretty fitting nickname to call her Searoha. So of course in this Fate We've, as was already previously mentioned in my news video, similar to how the other gacha went for the other beach event, the Homura beach event, if you draw in this gacha and you get one of these two event Memoria that are also lined up further down there, you will indeed get some summer tickets, and you can use these summer tickets to buy some of the summer costumes that you can see right here. A little bit of trivia: did you know that Masara is actually a swimmer, and that's why this is her actual swimsuit? Wow, that she uses for like competitions and stuff, and you can see it in her personal Memoria as well. So look up Masara's personal Memoria right now. I think it's called like Hang Out to Dry. Anyway, besides that, as is the case in the other gacha as well, you won't need to pull all of these summer tickets to get all of these costumes. Some of these costume tickets, these summer tickets, will be available in the event shop for the Summer Iroha event. So if you want to pull for the summer tickets, it's probably best to just play the event first and get all the summer tickets you can from the event, and only afterwards, if you still want some more tickets, that's when you can decide to draw the gacha. But moving on for what is actually in the gacha, we have Searoha right here, who is a support type of these discs, and that's connected Magia and everything. Let's go over it in detail. So we have our little Searoha right here, and we can see that her discs are quite alright, but her discs don't really mean anything yet until we know what she's actually supposed to do in battle. And we see that she is indeed marked as a support type, and her stats are fairly balanced across the entire board, as you would expect from most support types, although some support types are just a tiny bit more in defense or a tiny bit more in attack. But for the most part, these are stats that you would expect from something like a support type. Now, of course, if you look at any type of water character in this game, you kind of need to compare them to other characters that people might already have, people might already be using, most notably this one, who is probably the most notorious character in the entire game right now, especially after the last ranking mirrors. So any type of water character will have to go up against Nanaka in some way or another. Of course, Nanaka is an attacker, a blaster, and Searoha isn't quite that, but still, if you only have a water slot, or you think about in general, I want to take a water type of character with me, you kind of need to worry about how does it stack up against Nanaka. So let's just look at her stats, and you see that these stats aren't that dissimilar. Of course, Searoha has like 4,000 more HP, but apart from the HP, their stats are mostly the same. And having mostly the same attack and defense as a free character, or mostly free character, who pretty much almost everyone is going to have at 4 slots, that's not a good sign, because HP is not actually that important, and apart from some very few cases. But okay, let's move on, and before we pass judgment over anything here, we need to consider a whole bunch of other stuff, most notably the connect, which is the most important part about a lot of characters, especially supports. So, like as I said, since she is marked as a support, that kind of is supposed to tell you, hey, this character has a really good connect or really good Magia effects that make other characters really strong, more so than other characters have. Although by that standard, Nanaka should also be marked as a support because her connect is actually broken. But anyway, looking at this connect, it actually looks like a pretty interesting connect. First off, it doesn't have just any attack up on it, because most connects have some sort of attack up on it. This one doesn't, which isn't always a bad thing, because a character needs more than just attack up. I know that I often go on about how important attack is, but I also mentioned that attack up first off only stacks to 100%, and secondly, there is actually a thing as too much attack, because at some point there's supposed to be some damage buffs, like blast up or damage increase or damage up. Anything like that is supposed to also be in the mix somewhere. So you gotta have some source of damage buffs and not just attack up. So getting something like a blast up is amazing, and it's actually more amazing if you get it together with an attack up, which is actually completely broken. But speaking about Searoha, just having a lot of blast up is really awesome. And the other two parts about this connect is what make it so interesting is it gives a pretty hefty defense up. And if you put this defense up on a character who already has a lot of defense, that's really awesome. This can reduce damage by an enormous amount of damage points. And it also gives chance to foregone attack, which is like not actually that interesting. Although there are a few cases where this is really important. So there are some cases where this connect can be really awesome, but before I talk about this, we need to talk about a second aspect of her, which is her Magia. So since she has 2 Axel discs, and I think there's some Memoria also, we're going to talk about Memoria later, it also gives MP gain up, that you might play alongside her. She's supposed to actually use some Magia at some point, or use her doppel, which is apparently a heartless. I don't know why it looks like that. And you see that her Magia and doppel actually hit in a vertical line, which is one of the very few Magia out there that does that, but therefore it does more damage per tile than an AoE tile. So if you're fighting against an enemy or an enemy lineup with multiple enemies that have like most of their strong stuff, like either you have multiple enemies and most of the strong enemies are like in a line, or just in general they're in a line, it's going to be more effective than AoE Magia. Or if you have a big boss and that big boss has maybe in total, let's say about 5 tiles and 3 of those are in a vertical line, then this one will also be better than a regular AoE Magia. But I think if you have about 6 tiles you want to hit, then a regular AoE Magia is better, but not that many bosses actually have that. It really is very situational when this Magia is stronger than a regular AoE Magia, but I think in more cases than not, this is probably stronger than a regular AoE Magia. Anyway, more importantly though, it also gives a bunch of effects, and since she is supposed to be a support type, these effects must be really good, right? Well, first off, it gives a defense down to all the enemies hit for 3 turns, 27.5%. 27.5% is not a whole lot, especially when you're going to use Magia more specifically in PvE, because in PvP, first off, you're not really gonna fight so long that you're gonna get Magia off most of the time, and even if you do, you're supposed to just win with the Magia immediately, or not have people survive on like so much HP that it actually makes a difference if they have a defense down debuff or not. So this is pretty much only relevant for PvE, and in PvE, enemies don't have a whole lot of defense. That said, of course, there is a scaling on this. Most of the time these buffs and debuffs do have scaling, but not all the time. Like, I don't know, does an archer have effects that don't scale? Okay, remove buffs doesn't scale. Wow. Anyway. So it does scale at least with Magia levels. So on Magia 5, you're going to be sitting at 37.5%. Still not that much, because like I said, in PvE, enemies don't have that much defense, so a defense down isn't that important. However, if you're fighting against an enemy that does give himself defense up, like some challenge quests and some EX quests do, then this is actually really good at countering your enemy defense ups. Once again, it subtracts that number from the enemy buff. So if the enemy buffs himself with 50%, for example, and you hit him with this, it will do 50% minus 37.5%, which is 12.5%. So the enemy will instead be sitting at just a 12.5% defense buff, which is pretty alright. So in general, this is usually just to counter enemies that buff their own defense. Against enemies that don't buff their own defense, it's not going to be that effective, just because enemies don't usually have that much defense in PvE. Apart from some rare cases where it might be pretty good, like in some EX challenge quests. Like in some EX challenge quests, especially against enemy Puella Magi, they might actually have a lot of defense, especially in the future. Moving on, the Excel MP gain up for all allies for 20%, or at Magia level 5, 30%. This is a pretty good buff for the entire team to get this amount of Excel up for 3 turns, which is kind of supposed to signal you like, hey, this is a really cool thing to have on a team that is trying to spam Magia over multiple turns. Of course, this kind of effect is of course useless in any sort of challenge quest or EX quest where you are supposed to just win as soon as you use Magia. Like, let's say you have 3 characters and all of these characters build up their Magia or build up their doppel, and then they all fire it off at once and then the fight is over. In that sort of scenario, getting a buff for 3 turns is not going to do anything. But if you are indeed trying to spam Magia across multiple turns, then this is indeed a really awesome effect to have, which is kind of supposed to tell you like, hey, this is Magia team, right? Magia team, yeah. And then of course HP restore, because she just does that for like 28% at total 28.7. What is this number? like 0.7 and scales by 2%. 0.7? I don't know why it's got a 0.7 over there. Anyway, so the heal is actually pretty nice, especially if you do indeed end up spamming this Magia. You can actually have a sort of team that is just trying to spam Magia for defensive purposes, like not even trying to kill the enemy team, sort of like double Madoka. So you can have double Madoka and then throw this into the mix to also not just reduce damage and heal with Connect, but also heal with Magia now, and also give more Excel MP gain up, so you can get even more MP all the time, which would be a pretty cool team for just defensive purposes. So that is something you could do as well. So for the most part, it seems like there are two parts to Searoha. She can either be an Excel support, a Magia support, by spamming her Magia with the Excel MP gain up that she gives herself and her entire team to just pump out a whole bunch of Magias over multiple turns, while also healing the entire team. So I support for a defensive Magia spam lineup, she can do that. Or you can play her as a blast support with her Connect, which is actually really interesting, that her Connect is basically, this is good for blast support, and her Magia is, this is good for Magia support, which basically means that if you actually do end up going to Magia, you're probably on a Magia team anyway, because on a blast team, you're probably not gonna get to Magia, so it's okay that the Magia is just for Excel teams, it doesn't do anything for blast teams really. For blast teams, the important bit is the defense up is actually also something that similarly to the Magia gives some sort of defensive, like as I mentioned, the Magia heal, so that's a defensive capability that you have that not many other Magias have, and with the Connect having a defense buff, that's also a bit of survivability thrown into the mix, and also the chance to fog on attack is also just a defense buff in disguise, because if enemies miss attacks, that's more survivability for you. So something that I need to mention at this point with the chance to fog on attack, of course, if you're using this as a blast support, which if you're trying to worry about actually using the Connect to its full potential, you will be using this in a blast team. If you have a character use a blast disc with this Connect on them and they hit multiple enemies, this will fog multiple enemies. This is indeed what will happen. So this actually makes this being even more of a blast support Connect than it already is. And the defense is really nice if you have some sort of balance type blast support, maybe in case you're already seeing where this is going. If you had some sort of blast support, some sort of blast character who is also balance type, this would be really good, because balance types already have a bunch of defense, and if they already have a bunch of defense, giving them a percentage defense increase will give them even higher defense than if someone had like no defense, because if someone has no defense, 0 defense times 2 is still 0, but if someone has like a 12,000 times 2, that's quite a lot. So this so the defense up buff is indeed more effective on characters that have higher defense, meaning that this is actually really amazing to use on a character called Tart, where this Connect is actually going to be absurdly good, because it gives her blast up and it gives her defense up. Since Tart already has quite a good amount of attack, and you're probably going to play Tart with at least one really powerful attack up Memoria, Tart is going to have a lot of attack, and then on top of that you throw some blast up, it's going to do a lot of damage to your enemies. So this is actually the perfect support for Tart, just in case, terms of giving blast. Of course, if you want both blast and attack, then Nanaka is Connect is still better. But at least for survivability, Searoha is better, yay! So for overall general purpose, survivability and damage, this is better. And with the chance of fog, you can fog multiple enemies at once. That's pretty awesome. Now, I talked a lot about all of the different aspects of this, because I wanted to talk about all these things that Searoha can do before I give you my verdict, which is that this is only a sort of kind of character. The problem that Searoha has is, here's the thing, she's really good at being a support for blast type characters that are balanced, like Tokiwa, Nanaka, wow, or Yachio, or Asuka, or Tart. But the thing about blast teams is that they usually perform better if there's more blasters on the team. And even more so, these characters already have amazing connects for damage output. Here's the thing, support characters are supposed to have buffs that they give to allies that are better than other people's buffs. That's what makes them support, right? Because if other people's connects are better than their connects, then what's the point of them being a support? That's not being what? So you look at this and you're like, what? Okay, I talked about all the things that Searoha's support connect can do, but Nanaka Connect can do it like too. And Tart Connect also has a defense up on it, so Tart Connect is also defensive. Yachio Connect gives some defensive capabilities, I think, doesn't? No, Yachio's Connect gives crit, which is also really good for damage buffs. So all of these characters that are blasters, they already have good damage buffing connects. So it seems kind of pointless to take another character for a damage buffing connect if they already all have damage buffing connects. If the character itself isn't actually going to do a whole lot. Kind of see where I'm coming with this? The blast team already buffs itself. They don't need another support on them. So the point of a support like this is kind of a bit questionable. That said, I will have to say this. If she was an Excel gorilla and her connect was more based on Excel, that would actually be really good. She would actually be a really awesome Magia spammer if she was built more towards a Magia spam kind of support. But the thing is, she's kind of like, her connect is pretty much nothing for Excel teams, because Excel teams, they do single target attacks. So fogging single enemies doesn't do anything, because fog is like one of the weakest effects in the entire game. Next to poison might actually be the weakest effect in the entire game. Defense up is nice, but blasters are going to be completely useless on Excel teams. So this is the connect that's mostly useless on Excel teams, even though her Magia is pretty good for Excel teams. And she's not an Excel gorilla, so she doesn't help too much with actually getting MP up. So I talked a lot about this, but overall, my verdict is she would be decent as a blast support if blast characters themselves already weren't decent blast supports, and her Excel support is lacking because her connect does nothing for Excel support. Hey, maybe her personal can save it. It's actually quite alright. Personal is also leaning more towards the Magia kind of team. It heals herself and gives herself MP. Note, this is just direct 10 MP, not 10% MP. Because if it was 10% MP, this would mean that if she had doppel unlocked and would go all the way up to 200 MP, then 10% would be 20 MP. But no, it's just 10 MP. So for that, it's alright. You don't actually need to limit break this at all, because if you max limit break this Memoria, all you get is 2.5% more MP restore, that's all. So yeah, it's alright if you're playing her actually in that Magia team that just tries to survive, it's fine. Apart from that, what else is in the gacha? We know in the gacha we also have this, which is a limited Memoria, sadly, that gives attack up 20% and MP gain up 20%. Also, not 20%, 12.5%. Also, almost looks like something that would be really good if she was fully tailored towards a Magia team with the MP gain up. But like I said, she's sort of torn between Magia and Blast, which is kind of pointless. She should have just committed to being Blast Excel support, but I guess she had to pamper her Yachio. And that's why she's part Blast support, in case you haven't picked up on that yet. So having a Memoria like this that gives 20% attack up and MP gain up, that's really awesome. This is a really awesome Memoria if it weren't limited. Limited Memoria kind of probably aren't going to be maximum broken by you, so since you probably won't get this maximum break, just getting a 15% attack up and 7.5% MP gain up is fine, but still there are so many other Memoria that do similar stuff like this that it's decent, it's okay, but doesn't really manage to do anything super special. We also have this one, learning by imitation or learn by copying, whatever they want to call it, which is also another Memoria that falls into the category of if you have nothing else that's better in this regard, like attack up 25%, if you have nothing else that's better and you still need another active, it's good, but still nothing super special that you would worry about. So a lot of talk about a lot of stuff. It's okay. If you want more summer tickets, yeah, whatever. If you really like Iroha, definitely go for it. Like, of course, if you like Iroha, definitely pull for this. You don't need to tell me to tell you this, but if you like the character, of course you pull for the character. Wow. If you want a blast support, just use Nanaka and Tsuruno, and you already got the 2 best blast supports in the entire game, so you don't even need her. So yeah, and they're both gonna be free 4 slots for you. So yeah, that's that. That's basically all there is to know about this. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.